as this is all going on, Steven, if I got to look at you one more time, I'm going to be very upset. I'm kidding. All right, cool. Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you all so much for being here. This is the third Rosary and Real Estate event, and it is continuously progressing. Every time we're in here, I see some different faces, and it's always a pleasure to be able to talk about the two things that truthfully are my passion and things that have changed my life, and that's my faith within the Rosary and within the Catholic faith, and then real estate, which has totally changed my life financially. So I'm always blessed to be able to do this. And I just want to kind of go through a few things before we get started, just some housekeeping. And I always started off with the real estate stuff first because it's a little bit lighter, it's a little more digestible. And then we're going to get into kind of more of the faith-based stuff where we talk about the Rosary. But specifically today, we're really going to talk about more so the faith aspect that built into the Rosary itself. So real quick, before we get started, I just want to know, why are you guys here? If anyone wouldn't mind sharing why they're here today, I'd very much appreciate it. If you didn't think this was going to be a volunteer session, it absolutely is. All right, I'm just letting you know. There's going to be a lot of calling out.
I mean, I'll say I'm here.
Who are you, first and foremost?
I'm Wadi.
Wadi.
By the way. I'm here because, I want to learn, and I definitely want to enter a mindset, like a more successful mindset. And
yes.
I feel like being here and seeing someone like yourself will definitely, have that come within me as well.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Give it up for Wadi, sharing a little something about himself here. Who else? Who else is here? Why are we here?
I'm Martino.
Yes, Martino.
I'm here because you, friend.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
To this point, your energy, I align very much with you. Faith-wise has changed my life, and I'm always looking to communicate and build community with people that are also on the same kind of heart-based, higher self-view, so that kind of feel that as well.
100%, man. Appreciate it, Martino. Thank you very much. Give me one more. I know Joe's mom made him come, so. She was proud. Anybody else want to share? No pressure? Okay. Cool. Well, I appreciate that very much. And usually you're here for one of three reasons. A, you probably want to learn about real estate investing, which is awesome. B, you might want to learn about the Rosary and about faith, which is also awesome. Or C, similar to what Martino said, you might simply be here because I asked you to come. So if that is the case, I'm very appreciative of that. I'll tell you a little bit about me real quick, aside from the fact that you now know I love the Rosary and I love real estate. My name's Frankie D'Astoli, if that wasn't already known. I am a real estate investor, and my partner Steven over there, we own 24 houses, and we've 26 doors. Yep, thank you, Steven. And we purchased those in the course of the last year. All within the last year. Before that, I was with a real estate investment company where I was wholesaling real estate. Before that, I was in medical device sales. But interestingly enough, I'll give you guys kind of a quick note. When I was in medical device sales, I was making a lot of money, but I realized that I was trading time for money. After reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, if you haven't read that book, it's a great foundational book to put you in a financial mindset of how to really kind of get into the investment space. And I read that book and I said, I love my job. I had a phenomenal boss. But at the end of the day, I'm going into work every single day and I'm trading my time for money. I'm on call basically all the time. I'm in the operating room with these surgeons. And it was great. Again, don't get me wrong, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted. And after really kind of digging in and understanding what I wanted next, I decided to pursue real estate investing. And I linked up with a real estate company. However, when I first applied for that company, I got an email back saying that I was denied. And I applied for an acquisition specialist role, which was simply to answer the phone. That was it. I'm in medical device. I'm in potentially one of the hardest sales roles that's out there. And I got denied to answer a phone call where the salary was also literally 1/4 of what I was making. But anyway, I replied back to the email and was just like, hey, I'm super appreciative of the response. If you don't mind, could you give me a little bit of background on why I wasn't accepted? At this time, I went into my church in Jackson, New Jersey, St. Aloysius. I sat in there, I prayed, I asked for guidance, I surrendered it up to God. As I walked out, I got an email with them asking me to come for an interview. After I went on the interview, they decided to hire me for a higher role. I went in as an acquisition an acquisition manager, where I went and I learned how to what's called wholesale real estate, which we're going to get into a little bit today. And after that time, I did that for about 6 months. They promoted me to run the Philadelphia office. I became a regional sales leader after that. I was in the PA office. I opened up the New Jersey office. I was in Alabama, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, all over the place, doing all of this stuff, learning about real estate investing. And then interestingly enough, I link up with Orlando back there, and he introduces me to something called Exodus 90. Exodus 90 is it's a Catholic men's spiritual retreat, basically, I guess is probably the best way to say it, that lasts 90 days. And the app Exodus 90 brings you through the book of Exodus. For anybody that's not familiar, it's where God brings his people out of Israel into the promised land with Moses as the leader. And during this time, I felt a true calling to leave my prior job. And I realized, again, I was still trading time for money. I learned a ton, invaluable learning. I met my business partner, Steven, through there, sold him a triplex, which is still one of his best deals, although he doesn't admit it. And I made a decision to leave. And June 1st of 2024, I officially left. We bought our first house together April 12th of 2024. And this Friday, we close on our 25th. And I cannot emphasize this enough. The surrender that went into that continues to go into that, is what keeps me going, right? And that is the thing that's truly changed my life. And we'll get into the rosary for sure. But the ability to just give it to God and to just say, you take care of it, it's a life-changing thing. And it's a hard thing. It's a very, very hard thing. And my goal with this group, really what to expect, is to build financially free followers of Christ. That is what the goal is, right? We are in this for generational wealth, but even more, we're in this for generational faith. And when you pass on things to your kids or your grandkids or to whoever it is that's important to you in your life, it's not just about passing on the assets. It's not just about passing on the things that are going to provide for them in a material aspect. It's about passing the things on that are going to stay with them through their life, that they're going to pass on. Because I promise you this, and Jesus tells us this ain't going to be easy, right? And as a real estate investor, with, like I said, we're closing on our 25th, it is not easy. There is more harder times than there is good times, right? But the good times make up for that. But again, you don't go through it with just this mentality of I could do it myself. You're going through it with the faith. And that's what we're really trying to build, right? So the two foundational pillars of Rosary and real estate is the generational wealth and what we call the spiritual poverty, which we're going to talk about. And if you are familiar with the Rosary, does anybody know what fruit of the Rosary is spiritual poverty? Anybody know? All right, it's okay. It's the third joyful mystery. The third joyful mystery is the nativity. Fruit of that mystery is spiritual poverty, or I think they might call it poor in spirit or something along those lines. But so what to expect? It's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to talk about real estate, and we're going to talk about the rosary, and we're going to talk about faith. And I'm going to answer a ton of questions. And the past two, rosary and real estate, the first one, the big emphasis on real estate was the 9 steps to closing a deal. That was the first one. If you guys have any questions in regards to that, please feel free to reach out to me offline, I can answer any questions on that. The second one was running some numbers on a long-term rental. Today is actually going to be a little bit more of a Q&A in a sense. I'm going to ask you guys what's potentially holding you back from closing your first or your next real estate deal. And I'm going to give you my personal tips on how to do that. Okay, so that's what we're kind of going to cover today. And then we're going to talk about some faith-based stuff as well. I want to just real quick hit on rare and then too rare. You might be looking at this and be like, what the heck is this? So Rosary and real estate, before I even knew opening it, actually the acronym is RARE, which is kind of funny because it is rare to be someone who strives for financial freedom while also being a faith-based person. And then there's something that's called too rare, which is the order of Rosary and real estate, which is what I opened up for anybody that's looking to go the extra mile. I'll be totally truthful. I haven't really done too much with it. The only thing that has really come from the order of Rosary and real estate is you get 10% off merchandise. So if you are looking to buy some merch, join the order first. But if you are looking to join Too Rare, definitely let me know. There's no like crazy requirements. Basically, you make a commitment to pray a rosary a week, and you make a commitment to strive to invest in real estate. That's it. And I don't even really like check in on you and be like, hey, did you pray your rosary this week? I promise you it's not that crazy, all right? Although you should be. Fourth, giveaways. So every event I do a gift basket giveaway. When you came in and you signed in with my brother-in-law, Christopher, he put your name in a jar. At the end, we're going to do a drawing for that. So you're going to win some cool stuff. We have a handful of sponsors that donated some things as well, which I'll break down when we get into the giveaway. Merch orders. Again, if you are looking to order some merch, whether it's hats or sweatshirts, I do have 2 sweatshirts available here you could purchase. But you could also order some stuff with me as well if you want a different color or whatever the case might be. And last one, rosary at the end. So this is going to run till about 7:50. At 7:50, I'm going to let you guys network. There's no timeline. This place closes at like 10, so we have all night if you want to stay. But it ends at 7:50. You got some time to network. At 8 o'clock, we are going to pray a rosary for anybody that does want to stick around. This is totally optional. I'm not in the business to force this down anybody's throat. Conversion happens in the heart. It's got to come naturally for you. You got to want to do it. Cool? All right, any questions so far? Oh, last thing I will say, I had this person hit me up on Instagram. Their name's Refuge Rosaries. It's this girl, Jess. I think she's out in like Indiana or something like that. She has her own kind of little shop where she makes rosaries. and she reached out to me and asked if I wanted a custom rosary and real estate rosary made. So I said, of course, obviously. And she made these designs. Oh, excuse me. So these are actually available for purchase, $20 a rosary. The sweatshirts are $40 as well, but if you sign up for the order, you get 10% off. All proceeds go to Good Counsel Homes. It's a program that takes care of sheltered mothers, mothers that didn't want to terminate their child and pretty much said like, I'm going to have the kid and I'm going to stick it out, and did something really brave. So all proceeds. $20 rosary, $40 sweatshirt. If you want to order a hat, those are $30 as well. All proceeds are going to go to Good Counsel Homes. Cool? All right, awesome. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first topic we're going to talk about is real estate. Like I said, it's a little bit more of a digestible topic. So I want to know, again, I'm going to start this off with a Q&A, and I do have some stuff that I want to break down in regards to a way that I've entered into some deals and how you can enter in some deals. But again, like I said, this is a volunteer episode. I'm so used to filming content with you. That's why we're creating a mini docuseries. I don't even know if Steve knows about it. This is volunteer encouraged. So anybody wants to talk, what's holding you back from closing your next deal? Rob. High interest rates. Okay. We'll talk about that. What else? Orlando. Property management. Okay. Yeah. Who feels like they don't have the knowledge? Who here doesn't have the money? Couple hands. Everybody in here is rolling. Everybody's locked up. Anybody wants to lend on a deal? We got one closing in a couple weeks. All right, couple hands on that. So lack of money, lack of funds, we'll call it. What about who doesn't have the time? Who maybe is just a little too busy with their job. They don't really have the time to get it done. Yep, lack of time. Any others? Martino.
Lack of deal flow.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. Any other ones? We want to get them all out. We're going to cover all of these. What's that, Dave? Say something?
I'm sorry, inflated cost of housing.
Yeah, high price on housing, right? Okay, so I'm going to do my best to cover every single one of these, right? And if you are involved, whether you voiced it or not, just take note on a lot of this stuff here, right? So first one is high interest rates, right? This is a quick saying, Rob. You date the rate, right? You marry the house, you date the rate. You're at a point right now where interest rates are high. They have been coming down, thankfully, but for investors, it's even harder, right? It's harder. Usually, if you're coming in it from an investment perspective, you're paying about 1 point extra than someone who's buying the house to live in. So that's something that's to keep in note. But what you want to understand is this kind of all flows with some lack of deal flow, like what Martino was saying in regards to deals penciling. It's going to be a little bit harder, and you always want to try to hedge risk when it comes to buying for interest rates. So if your interest rate is, let's just say 7%, and you're at a break-even cash flow, you don't have much wiggle room there. And for instance, break-even cash flow pretty much means is Wadi, right? Wadi pays me $1,500 a month, right? I have a mortgage payment of $1,500 a month. That's a break-even cash flow. I don't have any cash flow, right? Wadi pays me $1,500 a month. I have a mortgage payment of $1,000 a month. How much cash flow do I have? 500, right? And that's gross cash flow. So there's a difference, and I'll go real fast tangent. Gross cash flow is the total amount that I get on a deal minus the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on my mortgage. Everything else is equal. Net cash flow is if I said, cool, that $500, I got to pay $150 to a property manager, and then I'm going to put another $100 aside for reserves. So now my net cash flow is $250. Does that make sense? When you're looking at it from a perspective, you always want to base off of net cash flow. You don't want to base off of gross, right? Because if you are looking at it, Rob, and you're saying, all right, cool, my mortgage payment's $1,500, my tenant's paying me $1,500, I have a net cash flow, a gross cash flow of zero. If one thing goes wrong in that house, now I'm shelling out money, right? So you want to try to avoid that. When it comes to the interest rate, again, there's certain things that you could do too. And Joe, raise your hand, Joe. You should talk to Joe because Joe's a lender, and he could tell you that there's certain things you could do like buying down a rate where you could basically say, hey, I want this property. The rate is 7%, which means I'm only gross cash flowing $200, but I rather gross cash flow $400. So I'm going to buy down my interest rate so that way I can expand my cash flow. Does that make sense? Martino, go ahead.
I'll add on to that. You get a seller's assist depending on the market to do that for you, not depending on pocket.
100%. So when it comes to interest rate, what I want you to understand is this is not as scary as it sounds. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, high rates, high rates. And again, it's all about understanding the market. It's all about understanding your asset. It's all about understanding risk, right? If you also buy a house, and I know it's going to sound crazy to people, but if you buy a house for $150,000, oh my gosh, are they even out there anymore? They are, okay? Steve and I are in that business. When the interest rate goes up or down, it really doesn't affect cash flow the way a $500,000 house does, right? And this is an unfortunate thing that some people are going to have to come to an agreement on and an understanding is just because you live in one area, that doesn't mean you should invest in that area, okay? I live about 45 minutes from where Steve and I invest. He happens to live about 15 minutes. But if we didn't find this particular market, we probably would have went to a spot about an hour and a half away. And it's all about formalizing the correct team to get those things done, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Rob, did that answer your question on interest rates? So what I will say, again, remember this, you date the rate, you marry the house. That's the way you want to think about this. There's things that you could do to hedge against that interest rate, and there's ways to kind of get around it. Cool? Any questions on interest rate before we move on? Fantastic. Go ahead, Dave, you have someone? Oh, no, sorry.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that the interest rates really usually just pencil out.
Yeah.
The cash flow is a word doesn't matter. Interest rate could be 22% again, but if the deal works in terms of your making your payments and how much you charge for rent at that given time, your cash flow, it really doesn't matter. Interest rates just gets absorbed, passed along to the tenant. Again, but it's got to pencil out. So that goes back to the pricing of the deal flow.
Yes, which we're going to cover shortly, and I have some really sick stuff that I'm excited to share with you guys. Joe.
One thing I'll just say, so like when we're underwriting a deal and someone's coming to us for a term loan, like things that we throw in that they roll, usually when they send us the information, like they just send us rent roll basically, so how much they're getting on rent annually, what's their annual taxes, what's their annual insurance. We'll always fill in a 5% vacancy, so basically taking that gross rent, multiplying that by 5%, subtracting that, and we'll also throw in 7.5% of that number as additional expenses, landscaping, things go wrong. So it's not something our borrowers are necessarily sending to us, and like it's not that we won't do the deal if those don't hit, but like that's our guidelines, and it's a safe thing for you if you're getting into it. And you're like, I get the 1,500, but like, what are those other things? Those are like what we're doing as a company. So I would say those are safe guidelines to do it. If you could pencil out there, or even if it's even at that point, you're in a good appreciating market, like don't worry about the rate. But,
Yes.
you know, one thing for us, you know, people don't always love it, but like if they come to us, like we'll tell you if it's, you know, we're looking out for our borrowers. We don't want you to get into a situation. So if you have any questions, just talk to us. You know, we're not going to write you in.
100%. Joe works for Renova, by the way. You should definitely grab his card after this. One thing I will say, Rob, to your point, though, this is the only thing that is kind of different. If you wanted to flip houses, that's a number that you're keeping an eye on, right? Because you need to know if the higher interest rates go up, usually that means you got to drop the price of your property. So if you bought a house expecting to sell it for $300K and interest rates jumped up a point and a half, you might have to come down on your purchase price because every market has a particular purchase power. That's something you need to understand, right? If someone is willing to pay $250,000 in one market and you say, I'm going to try to set the market at $300,000, but then they can move to a little bit of a nicer area and buy a house for $300,000, it's not going to work out for you, right? So you got to understand that, and that all comes with knowledge, building up that knowledge. Go ahead.
Another answer to that question is something to you.
Yeah, which are phenomenal. I'm not like a sub-2, connoisseur, so I don't want to necessarily get down to talking about that too much, but we have done some creative stuff, which I will be explaining, but you're absolutely right. Sub-2 is great. That's something that you can definitely look into as well. All right, I just want to keep the ball rolling here. Property management. So again, I think this all comes into penciling out deals, Orlando, because you need to make a judgment call. Do you want to be an operator of real estate, or do you want to be a passive real estate investor? And when it comes to buying property, specifically buy and hold, because that's the only time you're really dealing with property management, you got to make that decision. And if you decide that you want to be a little bit more passive, you're going to take a haircut on your cash flow. But it all depends. Everybody's different. Steve and I, we kind of self-manage, but we hired somebody. Her name's Kelly. She's our director of property management, where she manages the day-to-day stuff, the tenant. She's our buffer. And to us, she is invaluable. wouldn't trade her for the world, right? And that's us, because to us, we need to focus on acquiring houses, renovating the houses, refinancing them, building and scaling the portfolio. So for us, it works out great. We love her. She's a great addition to the team. That's for us. If she decided she wanted to leave tomorrow, I'd be looking for somebody to fill her spot. But to you, if you're like, hey, I'm looking to buy maybe one house a year over the next 5 to 10 years. To me, personally, you don't need a property manager unless it's like a really deep property and you're going in a different market. That's a different story. Yes, Rob? It's all up to you. I think personally, and if anybody disagrees with this, you can let me know. I think once you get up to about 10 units, if you're not a property manager or like doing that stuff, then it gets a little overwhelming personally. But again, personal preference. You could be at that point at 3 units, right? Or you could be at that point at 30 units. It all kind of depends, right? But again, with the property management, usually industry standard, they take anywhere from about 8 to 12% of the rent amount. So if the rent amount is $1,000, they're going to take anywhere between $80, $100 to $120 on that rent amount, right? Take it, by 2,000, it's, 160, 2,000, 2,400 or whatever it is. Yep. Any questions on that? Orlando, anything else?
Yes, more specifically, I kind of assume most of them are not that good.
Yeah, that's the tougher part.
They don't really care too much. It's just, if you want to turn over a lot, you want to incentivize for retention, like that. So,
Yes.
I'm not sure how easy it is to get a good property manager.
One thing I will say, and Joe, I'll let you rip, but one thing I will say is when it comes to property managers, when it comes to lenders, when it comes to contractors, I always look for referrals. That's the thing, right? The people that you find on Facebook or Instagram, it's not always going to work out. Sometimes you got to take chances. But like if we were going to look for like Joe, we just did close a deal with him. Joe was a referral to me as a lender that someone else had worked with, and I trusted that person. So for that reason, I trusted them. But to your point, Orlando, it's hard. Sometimes when it comes to real estate, it's kind of like sometimes it's like speed dating. You like test out a contractor, right? Our boy, not going to say his name on camera, but we tested him out. And guess what? We're breaking up with him, right? This stuff happens, right? So, but that's kind of how it goes. Joe, you can go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I'll say that at least has helped me is, especially with my first property, like if you're going in and doing like what Frankie was doing, right, and you're renovating the whole house, and then you're getting tenants in there, that's going to drop your percentage of calls that you're getting to replace shit by 95%.
Yeah.
Right off the jump, right? Because it's all important how much you're replacing. But I at least know my properties, mechanicals, every single outlet. Like I'm making this place, and all the appliances are new, so like I don't really get a lot of calls. 2, I prefer to pick my tenants. I think that's really important. When you go with a property management company, they're going to run the credit, they're going to run the background check, right? So the person's not going to give you someone who's been evicted before or anything like that. But I like putting my people there because you put good tenants in a good house, it's going to reduce your chances a lot of having to deal with anything. And then my saving grace is really just a good contractor. So like my lease agreements are all the same. I use a technology called Rent Ready. So all my documents, they pay online on there. So it's super. I'm not like managing checks and rent payments and things like that. But then if I do have an issue, I have one guy I call for my properties, and they just go fix it. And that's kind of like the one thing that we do have, because I'll say I maybe spend a total of like 4 hours a year on like lease agreements or finding tenants. Like that's super quick for me.
Yes.
Because I just have templates. But there is a one-off thing. If you don't want it, if you're not in, you don't want to do it. Just the contractor, hopefully you use for the renovation.
Right.
You need to find someone like that, have a good relationship with them, fix the issues when they come in. You're just taking a call.
100%. Yeah. And I will talk a little bit more about property management and how you could kind of understand if it's for you or if it's not for you. We're going to get into that shortly. All right. Lack of knowledge. Again, raise your hand if you feel like you're in this boat. I was in this boat. This is all common. So a few things that I'll recommend for lack of knowledge, right? Number one is you got to read and you got to listen to podcasts, right? So like we mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's a great book to start with. But really what you want to do is you want to understand what kind of strategy are you kind of looking to go into for real estate. There's a lot of different strategies, right? There's buy and hold, which has been a big topic so far. There's flipping houses. There's wholesaling real estate, which we can talk about in a little bit. There's house hacking. Understand what you want to get into and then start reading up on those topics. And by all means, feel free to reach out to me or really a bunch of other people in this room about book recommendations for that stuff. But that is for the most part, free. You'll spend a few bucks on a book, or maybe, you buy an audio book or something like that. But the podcast, Bigger Pockets, right? Especially the early stuff for Bigger Pockets. That stuff was good. Now it's a little more commercial in my opinion. Bigger Pockets is great. Ken McElroy, he's a really great investor that I personally recommend. His is the Ken McElroy Show. He's got a podcast. He talks a lot about current events, interest rates, Rob, that type of stuff. And he talks about great investment strategies also. So I would start there. But I think one of the biggest things too is mentorship. Mentorship. And I'm going to shout out Christopher, who's my brother-in-law, who's also my intern for the summer, right? He's getting paid for a mentorship from me. He drives around me all the time, right? And he gets to see Steve, how he does his renovations and project management. But that's a big one, right? Get a mentor. And again, the cool thing about real estate investing is most of the people that are investors, they like to give back and they like to talk about the things that they've done, their highs and their lows, right? Like you want to talk about the lows, like we got stories, trust me. But we love talking about that stuff. So find those people and really, see what you bring to the table with them, right? Don't just go up to them and be like, hey, can you mentor me? Maybe they'll say yes. Maybe they'll be like, sure, pay me a couple grand or whatever the case might be. That's your call if you want to do that. But there's really two ways to look at this. There's a pay to play way, right? Where you could go out and you could buy a mentor. And having said that, I have people that I do mentor and they have paid me and that's worked out great. Or you could come from this seek to serve mentality, which is a little bit more Christopher, although it's a paid internship. Shout out to him. But you can come with this seek to serve mentality, right? And that's exactly what I did with my mentors. I don't think I've paid for a mentorship, but I've paid in my time, right? And when I linked up with my real estate investment company, that was a W-2 job, but I had some great mentors in there. And then even when I dipped out, a few of you guys know Rob Fink. He's a really good friend of mine. He's a big flipper, developer, buy and hold guy. He just bought a laundromat a little while ago. He's doing the things that I want to do. It was a seek to serve mentality. I went into his system and said, how could I bring value here? How could I bring him more deal flow? Because that's what I specialize in. And in return, I got direct mentorship from him. So the ways that you could really get into the lack of knowledge aspect is read books, listen to podcasts, find a mentor. Like I cannot emphasize that enough. The mentors have been where you want to go. And Marcus and Rob are my two mentors. I talk to those guys at least once a week, at least. And we've been doing this for a full year of buying houses, and I've been in real estate for about 5 years. So 4 years. So lack of knowledge, you have the free resources, and you could go out and find that mentor. Any questions there? Cool. Lack of funds. This one is, I'm surprised not more people raise their hand. Maybe you just don't want, maybe you're a little shy or whatever the case might be. So lack of funds, I'm actually going to save this for last because I have an example that I want to draw out. So we're going to come back to that one. Lack of time. This is kind of in regards to some other aspects too, but when you have lack of time, usually it's one of two things. You either have a lot of time, right? Or you have a lot of money. It tends to work that way, right? Because if you have a lot of money, usually if you're doing a straight change time for money at this moment, and maybe that's why you want to get in real estate, you're usually pretty busy with your job. And it's hard for you to actually like get out and look for properties and underwrite deals and deal with contractors and deal with tenants and deal with all that other stuff. Usually if you have more time, it doesn't mean you don't have money. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it usually means that you have the capabilities to do more of that stuff, to go out and look for deals. Keep this in mind. Real estate is a contact sport. It's a contact sport. You need to be in the field. You need to be doing things unless you want to be more passive. And if you want to be more passive, usually you need to join into some partnerships. And if you are lacking the time, what you might want to do is you might want to find somebody that has the time. And exactly what I said, kind of that seek to serve mentality. This is how great partnerships are formed. Someone that maybe has, $100,000 sitting around and is looking to deploy it and get a return on it might say, all right, cool. Where could I spend this money? Cleveland, Ohio is a real poppin' market right now. Let me go. Maybe I'll go out. I'll take a weekend. I'll fly out there. I'll look at some houses. I'll talk with some realtors, and maybe I could find some sort of partnership where I could deploy some money and someone could run those houses for me, and we could have some sort of setup that way, right? That could be one thing, or it could be something even simpler like this. We're in a group right now talking to some people of, hey, who's got some deals? I would love to learn in that sense. Maybe I have some money, but I don't have the time or the resources. Let me find somebody that is doing that. How could I possibly give them some money? And again, I'm going to explain that a little bit more in a sense too. But if you're lacking the time, you might want to find somebody that has time. If you're lacking the money, it kind of works vice versa like that. Does that make sense? Any questions on any of that stuff? Cool. All right, lack of deal flow. This is a big one, especially when you get into it, right? And if you haven't even started looking at deals yet, get ready because this is your next problem, okay? So when it comes to lack of deal flow, I'm actually gonna ride this up a little bit. I'm gonna write some of this out. What you need to understand is this. Oh, Christopher, am I still in frame? Fantastic. Okay. There is on market. What's time, Christopher? Thank you. Versus off market. This is two terms that you need to know. On market. Martino, what's on market?
Anything on the MLS.
Anything on the MLS. Yep. Correct. Listed, for the most part, listed by a real estate agent, but not always. You could have a for sale by owner, which could be listed on Zillow, right? That's kind of on market, but not necessarily. Anything off market is not listed. And a better way to really more so explain this breaks down to two people: wholesalers and sellers. Okay? And on market, think real estate agents. Sorry for my scribbles, not the best penmanship. But real estate agents think on market, right? So that's one form that you could go. Cool. I'm going to go to a Keller Williams meetup. I'm going to go to one of Martino's events. I'm going to talk to as many real estate agents as I can. I'm going to tell them, hey, I'm looking to buy properties in Haddonfield, New Jersey. Send me anything that you have. I'm an investor. Here's my proof of funds. I'm looking to close X, Y, and Z. You could build that relationship. The second is off market. This is where the magic happens. And you need to understand that. Real estate investing over the course of the past couple decades has been commercialized. A lot more people have jumped into the space. It's become saturated, especially in certain areas. South Jersey is one of them, right? When you go just with real estate agents, these real estate agents, for the most part, have a Rolodex of investors, right? You need to really have some power and some bandwidth or whatever the case might be to really get a lot of those deals. When it goes on market, everybody sees it. The MLS is the biggest eyes. All eyes are on the MLS, right? So you need to understand, how do I cut into that? How do I break past all these other competitors? How do I get the edge? Off market is the way to do that. Now, wholesalers. Again, I came from the wholesaling world. Wholesaling and off market in general, I just want everybody to know, it's the dark underworld of real estate. So prepare yourself, right? Go into battle with St. Michael on your side, because that's what you're going to need, right? But it is the underworld. There's a lot of crazy and murky things that go on there. Now, it doesn't mean like you're buying bad deals. You go through a title company, it's all fine and good. But what I mean by that is, a lot of times there's dishonesty. There's people trying to make as much money on a deal and not leave a lot of meat on the bone. There's things along those lines. So you can't necessarily trust. Go ahead, Martino. Yep. Yes. There's no ethical codes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Now in PA, they just dropped a law where you need to be a real estate agent to be a wholesaler, and that'll probably eventually reciprocate into Jersey as well. But just having said that, that's some things you want to keep in mind. Later, brother. So wholesalers, okay, are the people that get the deals direct to seller and then bring those deals to the investors. Now, out of the 24, soon to be 25 houses that I bought, I would probably say it's been about 50-50 between wholesalers and sellers. And then maybe if that accumulates to like 20 of the deals, about 4 of them have been on market, right? But the wholesalers can be extremely valuable because what they focus on, their sole goal is to get deals. That is their sole goal. That's it. They are doing all the acquisition legwork to get these properties, right? Now, sellers, what you really want to try to do is you want to try to become direct to seller. Because if you become direct to seller, you get the property right from them and you get it for the price that you're looking to get it for. Because keep in mind this. I'll explain a wholesaler a little bit more. If Angela, I'm going to use you as an example. Let's say Angela's looking to sell her house and she wants to sell quickly, right? Let's just say she got a new job, she's looking to relocate, and she doesn't want to list the house on the market. She doesn't want, open houses. She doesn't want showing. She doesn't want to have to deal with a real estate agent. She's just like, I just want to get it off my hands. I want to sell it in as-is condition, and I need to close within 30 days. I don't have an option. I need to move out to Seattle. I'm not sending you there, Angela, I promise, right? But that's her situation, right? She's motivated in that sense. A wholesaler is going to go to Angela. They're going to say, cool, how much do you want for the house? Angela's going to say $100,000. They're going to say, cool, I could give you 80. They get it for 80. Then they bring it to investors and they sell it for 90, or they sell it for 100, or they sell it for 110, as much as they can make, right? Now, some wholesalers, and I like to put myself in this boat, do it ethically, right? And we'll say, hey, Angela, listen, this is what we do. Where we work with an investor network. I meet sellers like you all the time. I figure out if we're a good fit. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. If we're not, that's totally okay. I want to know like what you're really looking for. And if I could satisfy that, I'm going to get you a price and terms that hopefully makes sense to you. Hopefully you go to bed and you say, hey, Frankie's on my team. He's not, the A word, right? And then you're happy about it. And I can bring the deal to my investor. They can make some money and everybody wins in this situation, right? Some wholesalers are going to be like that. Other wholesalers are going to be like, yep, I'm buying the house, 80 grand. Facebook Marketplace, Zillow for sale by, maybe not Zillow, but some other places and stuff like that. And then they walk through their contractors, which are really investors, and they decide, hey, can we move this to an investor or not, right? So Some wholesalers are going to do it right. Some wholesalers are not going to do it right. But in the end, in the sense, that's how the wholesaler operates. Now, guess what? If Jack goes direct to seller and Angela's selling the house, it's probably their house together. But if Jack goes direct to seller and Angela says, hey, I want $100,000, and he knows, hey, I could pay 90, 95 for this house, and he negotiates that out with Angela, and then they sign a contract, great. Now Jack, just got that direct to seller, cut out the wholesaler, and just made an extra $15,000 on his return. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So how do you get to this point, right? There's two ways. This thing's falling on me. Hold up. Organic versus paid. And I'm going to hit this real fast because I got to start moving. Organic lead gen is things that don't really cost you much money, but cost you time. Okay? Paid lead gen is things that cost you money, but don't cost you time. Can anybody give me an example of organic versus paid, if anybody knows? Martino. Networking is totally organic. Come into this, you didn't have to pay a dime. You're actually getting food and drinks and giveaways. And you're going to learn and you're going to meet people, right? So networking is absolutely one.
Then paid would be like pay-per-click ads.
Yes. Yep. PPC, pay per lead, pop-ups on Google, right? Are you looking to sell your home? The first thing that comes up, sponsored. Those are things that you pay for, right? I'll give you guys a couple more. Networking is definitely one of them. Something called driving for dollars. Has anybody heard of that? So driving for dollars is when you get in your car, you drive around the market that you want to invest in, and you look for potential houses that look like they could be a good fit for you. And what you do is then you do what's called skip tracing, which is where you look up the property address, you skip trace that address, you get the owner's contact information, and then you reach out to them and you ask if they're looking to sell. You can do this totally free. Getting in your car, the only thing it's going to cost you is gas and time. Skip tracing, use a site. Orlando, you know what I'm going to say. What's the site called? True People Search.
Oh, yeah.
True People Search, totally free site. You can look it up. It works like a dime, right? That's another one. So driving for dollars. And then I'll give you another paid one, text campaigns, right? John, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your campaigns?
I work at W2, and instead of cold calling, I do text campaigns. I can send out like 50 an hour, 50 text messages to homeowners, and we get a lot of leads that way. So I highly recommend
100%, no doubt. So those are a few examples. There's a lot more. I'm going to rally off a few more, right? Cold calling is a little bit more of an organic one. You could pull a list off of certain sites such as Deal Machine, PropStream. There's a few other ones. I'm drawing some blanks on some stuff here, but you could pull a list, and it might cost you a little bit. It might cost you about 10 to 12 cents to skip trace a lead. So let's say you decide to pull 1,000 leads, it might cost you $12 or whatever it is. But then you could organically call on those leads and do some cold calling, right? Again, the organic, remember the relationship. It's going to be a lot less on your wallet, but it's going to be a lot more time, intensive. And then the paid, another one is like direct mail campaigns, right? For Q3, we're rolling out some direct mail where we're going to spend, close to a G a month, and we're going to send out about, whatever it's going to be, 1,400 postcards or 1,500 postcards, whatever it's going to be every single month for the quarter. It's about, 3,000 postcards a quarter, and we're going to let some people call in. It's a little bit less heavy on us from the time perspective, but it's going to cost us money, right? So there's always a trade-off here. Now, usually with the paid stuff, the reason that you're paying it is because the leads that you're going to get are going to be better qualified leads, right? If you send a direct mail campaign and I send one out to Mike and Mike gets my postcard and he says, oh, sell my house for cash. Yeah, I'm interested in this. I'm going to call Frankie. When I know Mike's calling me, I'm taking that lead pretty seriously because Mike's calling off my postcard, right? Whereas if Jack's doing 50 calls, he might talk to 5 people and all 5 of those people might say, yeah, stop calling me, right? That's a possibility. So again, there's always a trade-off here, but to get the lead flow, you want to be here. Not only for the lead flow, but for the return. If you get one deal direct to seller, it could make up for 3 deals that you get from a wholesaler. You know what I mean? So think in terms of how do I get quality over quantity? And I think in the time that Steve and I were buying these houses, like we've experienced that. We've experienced the time that we bought for quantity, and we've experienced the time that we bought for quality. Any questions on any of that stuff?
One thing I'd add to organic is just like when you are networking, is let everyone know what you're looking for and be specific. Don't feel like I'm trying to flip my first house. Like for me, I'm like a stress multifamily hand-me-down.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Like have that kind of buy box, let everyone know that about you because that's how you'll get them, oh, I know Joe's looking for that specifically.
100%. That's great, dude. Yep, Rob.
Something a little contrary. Do you think off market is starting to become a little oversaturated nowadays?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It absolutely is.
Like, people are very aware of text campaigns, Google ads, and everything
Yes.
that are going now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I think that comes with just markets in general, Rob. And like I was saying, it's not always like I'm going to invest where I live, right? Because most of us, I would say, we probably live in some decent areas, and a lot of people might have said, "Oh, real estate investing's cool. I'm going to start buying in my area," and that kind of, the barrier to entry is higher. And a lot of times when the barrier to entry is higher, there's two options of what you could do. You could either pivot out and go to a different market where the barrier to entry is lower, or you could say, how do I get the edge? How do I get the competitive edge? What could I do? And most of those people that want the competitive edge are doing a lot of the organic direct to seller lead gen. So that's absolutely true. And you're going to notice that, right? You're going to say, cool, I'm doing all of this organic, I'm doing some of this paid, I'm doing all of this in my market, and it's not yielding me anything. At that point, you need to make a decision. Is working my butt off to get one deal here worth it, or should I look for some other markets, right? And that's the difference between real estate and investing in the stock market. And that's maybe the only pro that I could give to the stock market is you don't really need to look at a market, you just need to look at a stock, right? And with real estate investing, although I give total props to real estate investing over stocks, so it's not even close. I don't buy stocks personally. I just, all my money goes into real estate. But I think there's pros to it. But that's the one thing that I will say is it's a lot easier. The barrier to entry to invest in the stock market, there is none. You download Robinhood, you can start buying, right? So any other questions on this stuff? Great question, Rob. Great. I want to share one thing. Christopher, time check. Okay. I want to share this really, really fast, and it sucks that I got to do this quick because I know there's going to be questions, but I need to get into the faith aspect. But I just want to tell you guys 2 ways that you could buy a house today, right? And this is outside the box. This is outside the box thinking, right? I'm going to give you guys 2 stories. So this is me, right, with the cool hair. This is Steve with the muscles. And this is, we're going to call this guy John. And John is very stressed, okay? Now, John owns 4 houses. But here's the problem. This house is vacant. This house is vacant. This house is vacant. And this house has a squatter. Poor John. Frank and Steve, we're eager to find our next house. So, to Orlando's point about property management, my friend John over here is getting absolutely slaughtered, right? He has absolutely nothing going for him. He's about an hour and a half away from the market, and he doesn't know what to do. So Frank and Steve own this one house here, and this house next to it has a lockbox on it. That's my lockbox. For anybody that doesn't know, that's the key. A lockbox is what holds keys, right? So as we're doing some driving for dollars, which we happen to own this house right here, and we're doing work on it, Frank and Steve see that there's a lockbox on this house. So who knows what we do next? When you see a lockbox on a house, Martino?
Skip trace the owner.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep, you skip trace the owner. You can use True People Search, totally free. And you call, right? So Frank and Steve call John. And we say, hey, we see that you have a lockbox on this house. We own this house next to it. Are you looking to sell? John says, I'm absolutely looking to sell because he's in a lot of distress. And he wants $300,000 for all 4 of these houses. Now, again, keep in mind markets, okay? To some people, that market, $300,000 for 4 houses, you're taking that deal every single day. That doesn't mean it's a good deal, right? Because when Frank and Steve look at that $300K, what we say is, that's way too high. Right? We're not buying that. We're not buying that for $300,000. So there's some negotiation that goes in, right? Because this house here that Frank and Steve owned, we got it for $58,000. So he's basically valuing that. I believe it's $75,000 each, right? 375, 150 times 2. It's 300. Yep, thank you. So he's valuing that at $75,000 each. We bought this one for $58, so it's not working for us, right? So we go back and we tell John, hey, we're going to take them for $55,000. And John says, absolutely not. I can't do that, right? So what ends up happening is we end up meeting for coffee. And where we meet, we decide that, first and foremost, we need to understand John's motivation. And although it seems very clear on paper, it wasn't super clear at the time because his motivation is that he's got 3 of these houses vacant and he's got a squatter in the other one, meaning they're not paying. But his real motivation digs a little bit deeper. John bought this portfolio about 2 years ago, and he never really did anything with it. And the reason that is because he lives an hour and a half away. He hired bad contractors that didn't do the job, and he has a terrible property management company that has put this person in there that's not paying. So for John, he has a little bit of an ego attachment to this, and he's verbalized this to us. He said, I don't want to let these properties go because I feel like I didn't do what I wanted to do on them. So we say, all right, John, well, we want the houses. You don't want to let them go. But something for us is we don't want to pay for them. So how can we form a partnership that we all get what we want? So what we ended up doing is we ended up forming a new partnership, and we'll call it FSJ LLC, where John, Steve, and Frank all enter into a new LLC. And what we did is we took John's properties, which actually were valued at about $300,000 when they were appraised, and we did a refinance on the properties. Now, just bear with me for a second. A refinance, just to try to break this down as evenly as possible, is where you take a new loan amount from the bank and it replaces your old loan amount. So John's old loan amount was about $175,000. And we got a new loan amount to replace that. So we refinanced these houses into FSJ LLC, where we put all of this into our new LLC. Steve and I become owners of these 4 properties without investing a dime. John becomes a passive investor where Steve and I are the owner operators. Steve and I run the project management. We run the property management. We formed an operating agreement where we met with an attorney and we got the operating agreement formed. The operating agreement states that we're going to buy these houses. Well, not buy them. We're going to inherit them. We're going to renovate them. We're going to rent them out. And we're going to do a cash out refinance where we could tap into the equity built in the deal. I'll give you a quick vocab word. Equity means if my house is worth $200,000 and my loan amount on the house is $100,000, I have $100,000 in equity. Okay. When we do a cash out refinance, the bank allows us to tap into that equity at the closing and put it into our bank accounts. So John, what he gets out of this is he's going to get 75% of the cash out value. Steve and I get 25% of the cash out value. So let's just make this real simple. Let's say after all this is done, the whole portfolio, when all of these are renovated and rented out, is worth about $500,000. Okay, 175. We go about $180,000 in reno. Gives us, if anybody could do some quick math on there, 175 at 180 plus 180 is 365, something like that. Thank you. 365. What is it? 55? Okay, 355 leaves about $145,000 in equity. John, I almost gave away his actual name, gets 75% of that with 75% of 145.
Basically 100.
Is it basically $100? 100,000? 109. We'll call it 110. Frank and Steve get 35,000. Now, Frank and Steve, because we're managing and operating it, we keep 80% of the cash flow. John gets 20% every month. So we got these deals with no money out of pocket, right? We own them, full owners, 80% of the LLC. We get 80% of the cash flow. Here's the thing. Not everybody is always looking to sell it. Some of them might just be looking to operate it better. And you got to know, what do you bring to the equation? This is an absolute true story. The guy, John, not his real name, is a really good friend of ours now because we got him a return that he wants to continue and invest with us, right? You need to understand what their motivation is and what's behind that, right? Because if he would have sold it for $300,000, yeah, he would have felt okay because he would have made the money that he wanted. But to us, it's not worth it. So we're not going to take that deal. But what could we bring to the table? And if you are in the time element where you have the time and you know real estate, or maybe you could get to that level, you could bring those things to the table for people that don't have that. Or if you have the funds, you could bring certain things to the table also. Make sense? And I'll give you one last example here. Let's look at somebody that has the funds. So we're going to look at my cousin, Joe. True story again. And then you have Frank and Steve. Frank and Steve are under contract on a house. Now, Frank and Steve, although things sound really dandy, had a month where we were just like beat broke, right? We didn't have anything going on. This is in the beginning. And trust me, this stuff's going to happen. When you go and you start scaling a portfolio, you're going to be broke at some point. We have this house that we're under contract for, right? Because we know how to be direct to seller. We have good wholesale relationships. And Joe is out in Staten Island. And he's like, man, I'm getting married. Like, I want to put some of this money to work. Like, you know what I mean? Because a wedding and a honeymoon and all that stuff, it's not enough. I need to spend a little bit more. And he's like, you know, I want to invest in real estate, but I'm not in the market to do it. Staten Island, the prices are through the roof. I don't have the resources. I don't even really have so much of the knowledge. You know what I mean? I've read some books. I've listened to podcasts, but I haven't been in there. How do I get my money to work? Steve and I happen to have this house, and we say, you know what? We could use some quick cash. So what we do is we involve Joe. Joe joins into our LLC. We buy this house. He puts the down payment for the property, which was about $15,000, right? So this is all funded by Joe. Once that's closed, Steve and I get to work on the renovation portion of the house. That's a hammer for anybody that was curious. Once this is all done, well, actually, excuse me, Joe paid the $15,000. He also then pays us $10,000 to do the management. Now, because we bought it with a short-term loan that has a renovation budget, we have all the contractors already paid. We took care of all that. After that's done, we put the tenant in there. So now Joe basically gets a turnkey property, and when the house refinances, right, because we do that cash out refi, Joe gets his $15,000 back. He gets the cash flow, but every month he kicks a prop management fee up to Frank and Steve. That's another way to get in the deal. If you're not in the market, or you don't have the time, or you don't have the knowledge, all things that we talked about, you could be someone who funds down payments, be part of an LLC, be more of a passive operator. Any questions on that? Fantastic. Any questions on? Yes, Dave.
If you are looking for a sum of money,
Yes.
you normally have to go to a bank,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to, but if somebody comes in, now what's the average rate, like roughly, if you were to just do a loan, say next week, roughly the interest rate?
Yes. All depends on which lender you're going with. Hard money loans, Joe. What's the rate right now?
Just as for this.
Yes, I would say like 10% interest rate, right? 10% interest rate and maybe like two points origination. Yep.
Okay.
Yes. And then
Now, if somebody said, okay, if it's say 10,000.
Yep.
Or 20,000, whatever.
Yes.
I'll say I'll lend you the money for 8%.
Yep.
What's the turnover on that as far as by the time that money gets back to that? Great question.
Yes. So it all depends on the project and the operator. Those are the biggest things. But you as the lender, if you say, hey, I'm going to give out 10 grand, you are able to make those terms, right? So let's just say I need to be paid back in 6 months, right? Which is usually on the lower end. Anything less than 6 months is a little unrealistic. But 6 months is usually the standard. Now, in a lot of my cases, and Joe is going to experience this in a couple months, we refinance our deals basically within 3 to 4 months. But not everybody does, right? It depends on the renovation and the intensity of the reno, all things along those lines. But usually, as the lender, you can make those terms if you want a 6-month payback, a 9-month payback, or a 12-month payback. Right. Usually, wouldn't go past that. I would say. Yep.
Lump sum.
Lump sum. Right. Yep. Plus, and then you would get an interest every single month. Yep. So if you said I'm going to do it for 8% interest, you could get it as an interest-only loan. You lend the $10,000. You make 8% every single month. And then that balloon payment of $10,000 is paid at the end of that 6-month term.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Great question. Any other final questions on the real estate stuff? Christopher, time check? Oh, snap. Okay. All right, cool. Well, I don't want to, take away too much of everybody's time. I definitely want to get into a rosary too. But, we covered a lot here. I want to talk just a few things in regards to the faith aspect, and then we are going to pray a rosary later today. But, I was reading this book. I'll bring it up over here. It's called it's a prayer journal. This is from, what's the site? RomanCatholicGear.com. I think it's official RomanCatholicGear.com. They have a lot of cool stuff, a lot of military stuff. They have like this awesome military rosary, which was issued by the U.S. government in World War I and World War II. They sell replicas of it. They're really, really fresh. But this is a really cool book. It's basically a journal. Every single morning you journal with it. In truth, I haven't used it the way that I need to. With a 2-month-old son at home, you don't get a lot of time, a lot of free time, and then you have a 18-month-old daughter. But there's one thing that was in here that really, really stuck with me. So Fulton Sheen is a really, really awesome Catholic. I think he's a priest, right? He was a priest for sure. Archbishop, excuse me. Yeah, I wasn't sure the level that he was at. But he talks a lot on the faith. He's a great public speaker. He has some really awesome works, and I've gotten a lot more into him as of late. But he has this saying, and I kind of put my own spin on it a little bit, but it goes like this: the blank of life. And this is a house with 3 units. Can anybody tell me what a house with 3 units is called? A triplex, right? Yeah, so I'm calling it the triplex of life. He did not use the word triplex, but basically what he was saying is there's 3 levels to life when it comes to thinking, right? Now, on the first floor is for the people that really just, they don't have any sense of higher authority or any understanding of it, right? They basically live about their life doing what they do. They rely 100% on themselves. That's how you look at it, right? So they kind of honestly have just, they're kind of going through life in a almost like a drifting state, right? They don't understand that there's any floors above them, okay? And they also like don't understand that there's going to be rent increases or anything like that. They're kind of just going through life like this, right? The second floor of the triplex is for the intellectual that thinks in terms of like science and theory. They feel that, like things like evolution and stuff like that is kind of how things have come about. That it's kind of more so in the sense of like, I have the power to bring myself to the highest of my own ability. I rely on myself to get myself there. That's the way that they think. The third floor is for the person that understands that there's a higher power that brings them up to that floor. Does that make sense? And from here, why is it the third floor? Because they have a clear picture of everything. The first floor can't see through the ceilings, right? They don't know what's going on up there. The second floor thinks that they have the best view, but really they're looking here, whereas the third floor is looking from here, okay? So why I found this really, really interesting is because A, we're Rosary real estate, right? It's a real estate kind of based topic. But B, it's because everybody that's here right now, you're working to get up to that third floor. And this is not an easy thing, right? And that's why I drew stairs. There's no elevators, right? Because you can't just press a button and go up. You need to work for it, right? And I actually want to, on that note, I'm going to bring out a little bit of scripture. Does anybody know who Father Mike Schmitz is? Yeah, he's on the Hallow app. He did Bible in a year. He's really awesome. I took my buddy Nico to see him in Philly the other day. And Nico's one of my best friends. He was a groomsman at my wedding. He was my college roommate. And he hit me up back in January and was pretty much just like, hey, like I feel like something's missing in my life and I think it's faith. Like, can we talk it out? So I took him to St. Peter's in Merchantville. We went to Adoration Hour for a little bit. It was really, really nice. And he comes from, he's actually like Greek Orthodox. That was his background. But he never really had a good like feeling with faith. It always kind of came in stressful times for him and his family. He didn't have a good relationship with it. So I bring him to Adoration Hour and we sit down and we talk about the Hallow app. I have him download it and he starts listening to Father Mike Schmitz. And since then, it's been about 5-6 months now, prays every morning, prays every night, prays throughout his day. He's growing significantly deeper in his faith. I'm extremely proud of him. And we went to, Father Mike Schmitz was in Philly, so we went to Capitol Grill in Cherry Hill first, couple steaks, porterhouse, honestly didn't hit. The ribeye hits at Capitol Grill if you're going to get it. And then we went to Father Mike Schmitz, and it was great. And Father Mike Schmitz was doing the parables tour, and he really hit on this. And to me, it really hit home, right? So I'm going to talk about the sower. That's the parable for it. It's well, actually, I'm not going to say it because I want to see if everybody understands it. But I'm gonna start here. All right. So let me see. Where is it? Okay. The parable of the sower. On that day, Jesus went out to the house and sat down by the sea. Such large crowds gathered around him, and he got into the boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood along the shore. And he spoke to them in length in parables, saying, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky ground, where it had little soil. It sprang up at once because the soil was not deep, but then when the sun rose, it scorched it and withered it for lack of roots. Some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it. And some seeds fell on rich soil and produced fruit 100, 60, or 30-fold. Whoever has ears ought to hear. Anybody know what verse that is? This is a massive question. Does anybody know what gospel it is? I'll give you a hint. There's 4 options. It's not Luke, so we're down to 3. Matthew. Congratulations. Give Valentina a round of applause. Matthew. And Valentina, as a little present to you, you get this. This is from Parables. It's a website that donated that. It's placemats, so enjoy. So yes, absolutely, great job. So that is from Matthew, right? And what we see here is, and I kind of liked it because it kind of had those 3 tiers in a sense too to it. So some seed, as you know, Jesus is speaking, it's the word of God, right? The seed is the word of God. Some seed fall on the path. Now think about a path. If you were to walk outside, a path is hard, right? It's hardened. There's no soaking into it. People, when they hear the word, it doesn't even go into their mind. It just flows over them. It stays there. and then a bird comes and eats it. And guess what? The bird in the parable is the devil. That's who it is. The devil is out there trying to take those things away from you so that you don't soak them in, so you don't understand it, so you don't have a chance to know Jesus Christ, right? That's the first level. The second level is some that fall on that rocky soil. There's a little bit of soil, and those are honestly the most common ones, right? And the realities are, most of us, when we leave here, we're going to be those people. And it happens to me too, right? You hear it, you're motivated by it, you're inspired by it, you're like, man, this is awesome, like I'm feeling good. And then when the sun comes up, it scorches it, it withers it, and thorns come and they crush it and they suck the soul out of it because it's not rooted in the faith, right? It doesn't go deep enough. The soil isn't deep enough. That's the second level. The third is when you have that rich soil and the word plants and it grows and you find that understanding and it takes root in your life. That is the goal. And it's not easy. Again, think about the staircases, right? It's not easy to get to that point. You need to work on that, and you have the ability to dig deeper on the soil. You have the ability to water it, to take care of it, to tend the garden, right? Literally the garden where it all started. So think about that, and when you walk away from today after we pray the Rosary, like I hope that resonates with you. And keep in mind, it's not easy. This isn't automatic, right? And everybody goes through ebbs and flows on how that goes. But that's one thing that I wanted you guys to take away from that. So we're going to move into this next part here. So again, like I mentioned, the two pillars of Rosary and real estate, and we're getting to the end of this, I promise I'm going to let you guys network and eat and drink and stuff like that. But the two pillars of Rosary and real estate is that generational wealth and that spiritual poverty. And we talked a lot about, ways to build that generational wealth, ways to get into your next real estate deal, things that might be holding you back. What does it mean to be spiritually poor, right? And I think when a lot of people hear this, and I know because my cousin had brought this up to me a couple months ago, it doesn't really make much sense, right? It's like, I don't really understand like what that really means. And the interesting thing about the triplex is the higher you go up, you would think like, oh, penthouse, like I'm getting richer. You're actually getting poorer spiritually, right? Because that's how it works. But I didn't come up with this. I will say I looked up some ways that kind of best describe this, and I found this, and I thought it was really good. To acknowledge our deepest human need for God and to grow in that longing and that dependence on a daily basis, okay? That is what it means to be spiritually poor. When you're poor, you're needy. And that sounds like negative connotation, but it's not. It's actually a positive thing, right? When you're poor in the sense of spirit, you need God. You rely on God. And Jesus says this, right? He says, blessed are those that are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, right? I'm pretty sure that's Matthew's Sermon on the Mount. That's what it means. And again, this doesn't mean that like you need to drop everything and follow Christ. Like that is something that people are called to. And if you feel you're called to that, fantastic. But that's not always the case, right? I could be spiritually poor while going out to achieve financial freedom. And that's why I started Rosary in real estate, right? Because when we get to this point of accumulating assets and trying to build up our cash flow to go to the paradise of Aruba or whatever it might be, right? We should also be striving to be poor in spirit so that we may go to the paradise of the kingdom of God, right? And that's the whole focus of that. So I'm going to go with one more scripture verse on this note too. I'm going to talk about Isaiah, because I really like this one. I was reading this morning. Isaiah 66, verse 2. My hand made all these things when all of them came to be, oracle of the Lord. This is the one whom I approve, the afflicted one, crushed in spirit, who trembles at my word. Why I like this a lot is because God is saying, I've created all of these things. At the end of the day, he has, right? Everything that's good, everything that you get pleasure from was created by God. Now, sin is when pleasure takes a different form and it gets twisted and it becomes, greed or envy or whatever the case might be, right? That's how sin forms. But everything that's pleasure came from God. So, yes, buying houses, having financial freedom, that could be good. But how does it become bad? When you think on the second level of the triplex that you did it all by yourself, right? Greed, exactly. This was all me. I'm the reason why I'm where I am, right? I don't need to, donate to charity. I don't need to be a generous person. I'm going to store all of this up because all of my finances bring me security. They bring me a sense of status. That's where you could take the pleasure of being a real estate investor, right? Doing a passion. I love real estate investing. It's my passion. That's how you could take that and you could twist it. Does that make sense? So it's really, really key for us to be vigilant of that, to understand like, cool, I'm pursuing this goal. I'm pursuing real estate investing. I'm pursuing financial freedom. I want to provide for my kids financially and faith-wise. How do I do it being in in accordance with God's will and giving myself up to him and passing down that generational faith even more than passing down that generational wealth. Any questions? Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys coming out. Thank you very much. That's a wrap for this. You guys, thank you. We're going to do... Thank you. We're going to do some networking for the next 10, 15 minutes. What time is it, Christopher?
58.
Okay, so at 8:10, I know we're running 10 behind. At 8:10, we're gonna pray a rosary in here. Again, totally optional. If you don't want to pray the rosary, feel free to leave or feel free to go over to the bar. Again, your first drink is on the house. Tell them that you're, obviously with the event, or just network. Like we said, Martino's an agent here, Joe's a lender, Tony's a contractor, John's, wholesaling deals and closing deals. Like there's so many people in here that have knowledge that you're looking for. Orlando is an Exodus 90 veteran. So is Dave. So is Mike. All these guys that are big in faith as well. That's a lot. And before we do that, thank you for reminding me, Christopher. We just need to take a group photo. Does that sound good? We're going to do a quick group photo.
Network, and all that.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Everybody's sitting down. I forgot the giveaway.
Oh.
Yes. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you so much for reminding me. All right. So last thing is we're going to do this giveaway, right? So every event I do a gift basket giveaway. And in today's event, we have a few sponsors that are in here. The first one is a Catholic group called Spiritual Warriors Couture. Crazy, I know. If you go on their site, they have some of the craziest clothes I've ever seen in my life. It's nuts. They're like, it's like luxury brands for Catholic gear. Like think about like Gucci for Catholics, right? So they donated this awesome tumbler. It's a St. Francis tumbler, which is really, really cool. I also have a great show sponsor. She's my first ever sponsor called So Catholic, SEAUX. She's out in Louisiana, like So Tigers or Go Tigers, whatever it is over there, right? LSU. And she makes these hand-sewn scapulars. And a scapular, it's a Catholic sacramental, excuse me. Thank you very much. Where you wear it and it protects from evil. There's supposedly saying that if you die and you're wearing it, you won't go to purgatory, which is awesome. You go straight to heaven. But in any regard, she hand makes them. They're really, very awesome. And this one's Divine Mercy for being that Easter just ended. A Home Depot gift card, $25. A book on burring real estate by David Green. And another book called The Secret of Mary by St. Louis de Montfort, who is one of my favorite authors and saints. And the last thing is a rosary and real estate rosary from Refuge Rosary. Jess is absolutely fantastic. I'm so appreciative of her as a sponsor. And again, merch, you could buy it. You could buy rosaries. But for right now, we're going to give this giveaway out. Christopher, just shake it up.
I'm shaking while you're talking.
All right.
You want to pull it out?
You pull it out, Christopher. Here we go. Drum roll.
He's not even here. Steven did not.
Unbelievable. He doesn't get it. Pass. That is so funny.
All right, one more real quick. Want another drum roll? John C.
John C. Let's go, John, baby. Christopher, get a quick picture of John and I holding the basket. Outstanding, John. Congratulations. Here, hold your basket.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Absolutely, man. Appreciate it. All right, let's get a quick group photo. If you wouldn't mind. Yep, I'm going to move this off. Christopher, I'm going to put the Rosary and Real Estate sign up.